Yours was a bit watery.
Mine's a bit watery. It's got a good flavor though.
Was mine bitter?
I believe that we're live.
Oh.
Because I put like too much grounds in the shot.
You trying to kill me?
It was heavy duty.
You trying to kill me?
No, it was to get you going. We've tried a bevy, a myriad of coffee beans, and this is you're drinking.
Is this Happy Goat?
That's Equator, and we had Cafe Jouet out in Rockland, and then this is Happy Goat. Happy Goat and Equator seem a lot more similar, and Cafe Jouet was
Joyful coffee in Rockland. He roasts his own beans.
right in the shop.
Cute little shop.
And his were more black and oily, like super dark black and oily, and then Happy Goat and Equator were more like a smoother, lighter brown, but they're all dark. Anyway, they're all espresso beans.
You're a professional now.
I think when we emerge, I think one of my jobs, I could apply to be a barista.
You should apply. Oh my goodness. You'd have so much fun.
I would love that
working.
job. It would be fun. I like people if I have something to do.
Yeah. You like people.
No,
No,
I don't necessarily.
you do not like to do anything without people.
I like being on the buddy system.
You love being on the buddy system.
I incorporate the buddy
system. You do
system
not like to go anywhere by yourself.
Many men's lives for many years, and so it's. I think the buddy system. You get in less trouble in the buddy system.
You've certainly gotten in less trouble over the last several years.
I feel that I can push the envelope with the level of question that I want to ask you, because I feel like you've been awake for a little bit, had a couple of sips, petted your dog, and I feel that I can ask this question because I think that your brain is working properly.
I don't think you should.
What is your favorite tool in the kitchen? And not like a new one,
but... This is the same
but...
question you asked like a few days ago.
No, I did not.
What's my favorite tool
in the kitchen? Me?
Sure.
That's funny. Oh, you're hilarious.
I love my frying pans.
Oh, yeah. You got new frying pans? Are you allowed to shout them out? Yeah, we don't get paid by anybody, so we can...
I'll take your sponsorship.
We can talk about whoever we want.
Paterno frying pans were on sale at Canadian Tire. They're crazy expensive.
Those, and they're
they
not
go crazy
Teflon?
on sale. No.
What was the movie that we saw about Teflon?
Don't talk about that movie.
With 3M and the people that poison people? Like, that was incredible. You should watch that because 99% of the world has the toxin of the byproduct of Teflon. It was scary. Anyway, these aren't Teflon, and they're the best frying pans in the world. My favorite tool, since you were going to ask me...
The espresso machine?
No, well, like, yeah, obviously, like, that's a machine. But I would say, overall, the whisk. I love the whisk. How many whisks do I have in the kitchen?
How many times have you used a whisk in the last, 30 days?
I think for most of us, tools in general don't get used.
So you really just like the fact that the whisk exists. That's what you like.
That's what I'm...
You like the fact that the whisk
I like the whisk. I think the whisk is a brilliant design to help you do a job that you probably couldn't do on your own. And I have... How many whisks? I have the little egg whisk, the little tiny one. I have the one that you push down and it whisks. I have the regular one. I have a few whisks. Anyway, yours is a frying pan. Mine has a whisk. That's what kind of people we are.
Because we spend so much
time
in the kitchen.
We are dog people. But as we branch off from the dog person, you are a frying pan person and I'm a whisk person.
I feel like that's...
I'm whiskey.
Like, if you asked me pre-COVID, like somebody making me coffee every day, a couple times a day, I would have said my French press.
Yeah, but that's more of a, like, what are you addicted to in the kitchen?
No, it's not. What do I enjoy? I enjoy my coffee.
Yeah. And frying things. Can you roast coffee in a frying pan? I've seen it. The Ethiopians.
Did you have a secret coffee before this?
No.
Okay.
Me and my
we are here for
Eritrean brother, Joe, we went into a coffee or Ethiopian food place, and they were this lady off to the side was using a frying pan and coffee. I was like, what is going on in that corner? But I didn't want to. And so Joe told me.
Remember restaurants?
It's my favorite thing. Not in the kitchen. One sec.
Where will we go first when restaurants reopen?
I don't know. But you're making me excited.
We'll go to Oko.
We went to a food truck yesterday, and it took an hour and a half before we got the food.
Okay, I was wondering. I had an hour and a half. That's crazy. And you missed your tea time. I was wondering, what if, I know you hate takeout, what if we packed, like, you know those little tray tables that we have? And
you're talking about a picnic.
And the lawn chairs. What if we packed those and
I think half the thing about restaurants
in front of Oko on that, because some of those stores are still closed, so we could pull up like, you know, the next door over, and we could set up our little chairs and our little tray table, and we could have them bring out the food, and
I think half the part of the restaurant is the ambiance and the noise and the people and the back end.
Okay, so that's not a solution.
We could go picnicking. What's the date today?
6th.
7th. Hey, it's my turn.
It's the 7th?
Yeah.
But we didn't read this.
The gift of readiness. It was willingness yesterday.
Oh yeah, I was. I read it.
No, we had a good conversation after. Let's get this going.
You need your glasses.
We're in slow-mo. Get me glasses. All right. Sorry for wasting time. All right, into orbit, June the 7th. It doesn't matter if they're hurting themselves. It doesn't matter that we could help them if they'd only listen to and incorporate with us. It doesn't matter. Codependent no more. That's a quote out of the book. I think I can change him. Nobody's ever really loved him and appreciated him before. I'll be the one to do that, and then he'll change. She's never been with anybody trustworthy before. I'll prove how trustworthy I am, and then she'll be able to love. Nobody's been able to get her to conquer her before. I'll be the one that does that. Nobody ever really gave him a chance. Nobody's ever really believed in him before. These, my friends, are warning signs. Red lights, red flags. In fact, if we're thinking these thoughts, they need to be stop signs. If we have gotten hooked into believing that somehow we will be the only one who will make the difference in someone's life, that's the key. Mm-hmm. If we are trying to prove how good we can be for someone, we may be in trouble. This is a game, a deception. It won't work. It'll make us crazy. We can trust that. We're not seeing things clearly. Something's going on with us. It will be self-defeating. We may be the one, all right, the one to wind up victimized. The whole thought pattern reeks of codependency, of not being responsible for oneself, and of victimization. Each person needs to do his or her own work. Nobody in the past really understood him. Nobody has seen what I see in her. It's a setup. It sets us up to stop paying attention to ourselves while we focus too much on the other person. It takes us away from our path and often puts us into orbit. Nobody has appreciated him enough. Nobody has been good enough to her or done for her what I could do. It's a rescue. It's a game move. A game we don't have to play. We don't have to prove we're the one. If we're out to show people we're the best thing that ever happened to them, it may be time to see if they're the best thing that ever happened to us. Ouch. We have not been appointed as guardian angel, godmother, or godfather, or the one who will. To the help, support, and encouragement that truly benefits others and ourselves emerges naturally. Let it. Prayer for today. God, help me let go of my need to meet dysfunctional challenges in my relationships. Amen.
Ouch.
That one's a hard one because it's...
So how do you know the difference?
Between helping or enabling or condoning. I think we're called to help and love and serve one another, but not be their higher power.
Right.
Not to enable, not to condone, because once we start doing that, we take the place of their higher power. So then I think there's a lot of people that we have to release, but we can point them in the right direction. I think we can take them to detox. We can help guide them. We can help, make them coffee. It's muddy water.
It is.
When it comes to the Christian world, because we are called to serve and help one another, but then not be consumed by another person, and then not be the other person's higher power. I think we have a job to lead people to the higher power. His name's Jesus, not John.
So then how does a person know, how do I know when I've gone too far one way, or I knew it was obvious with us, with you. I literally tried everything. Everything. Like taking your bank accounts, hiding your phone, remember the time I threw your keys? It was the middle of the night and I threw your keys over the fence into the neighbor's yard.
I was done.
That's gonna stop you from going out.
Imagine we called Uber. No, okay, so what's the point of going into orbit, as they were saying? What's the point of getting into these relationships? What does it do to the person? What does it do to you, getting into these relationships?
Well, I think...
Because we can't just make it behavioral. Don't do this, don't do that. But the reality is, it's doing something for the codependent. What's it doing?
Well, and I think that's the tricky part, is like we don't when it comes to talking also about the Christian world, and like trying to be a good person, a kind person, a person who cares about others and is there for other people. How do we distinguish that boundary line between like being a good person and caring for others and being of service to others, pointing them in the right direction? Or am I being and I think a lot of it would be like my thinking. And so how much of my thinking am I trying to be the other person's solution? Am I trying to come up with all the answers for them?
So what does it do to the person getting caught up into the chaos of another person's unhealthy patterns?
I think there's a rewards that plays in the head of between, the angst. It's that cycle of rescue, hero, victim, triangle.
Well, I'm referring to more of what it does inside of a person's body. So when somebody is involved in that behavior and they're not the addict, they would be the codependent. There's
a total, it's a roller coaster of emotions. Constant roller coaster of emotions. The hope, the failure, the disappointment, anger, frustration, throw in the towel, and then you come back begging, and then you make up, and you're good for a couple days, and everything feels so great. He's so good, and then he lets you down again, and so you're so mad, and now...
And it's the release of chemicals in your body.
Yeah.
I put myself in these situations, and I actually get a release of adrenaline in my body that I become addicted to. And so that's kind of the reward. That's the payoff in these relationships. And then that cycle continues and continues. And then that person gets into another relationship the same way. Or they're always that person that's helping these people, and they're caught in the chaos and the craziness of it. And so that's what I look at in orbit. It's the body's reaction to the tense situations and the chemicals that are released from that.
I read a term recently about emotional sobriety, and realized how often I actually didn't, and sometimes still don't, have emotional sobriety, where my emotions actually just take over. And I think it is a rush. And I was even like thinking, yesterday, even just like had a emotional morning. We had we're talking through stuff, this kind of stuff. Sometimes after we turn off the camera, we keep talking. Had an emotional morning yesterday, and then later in the day, I'm reminded that, oh man, I just really wanted to go away for a week this summer. Like I really wanted to go to a cottage. I wanted to go away for longer.
I was under the impression we already did that.
So then yesterday I got all like emotional. Oh, I should really look into that, and I should see if I can find a cottage to rent. It's like June already. And so then I realized, I'm like, oh,
You're
creating a scenario to have those, like that excitement, that good feeling, and now I'm actually going to wind up disappointed because any cottage that's available is like $3,000 a week, and plus I have this whole idea in my head that I create of like what I want it to be and what like all this stuff. And so I realized, I'm like, I had to stop yesterday afternoon and kind of pause and say, like, what am I doing? Am I actually creating that
the scenario for you to have your shot?
Excitement, disappointment,
Well, and that's a good thing, is like we can't ever address these things as behavioral, which most people do. Oh, don't get back in that relationship. Put up these safeguards. Do this, do that. And it's like all that does is shows that I can't do all these things. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I need, is a heart transformation, and for God to be my solution, not adrenaline, not what the sexual activity gives me, not what the food endorphins give me, not what the alcohol gives me. I have to have God give me that. And so with unhealthy relationships, all of that stress and chaos produces adrenaline inside of me, which I become addicted to.
And I actually read a really good article about like a psychologist who was examining this whole COVID crisis, and she was talking about how we go into like there's people that go into like the action mode, and how like the COVID crisis, like when there is any crisis, people jump into action.
So is that the fight or flight?
Yeah, like people jump into action. Some people fight or flight. So some people will run, like just buckle down and
bury their heads.
They're not the fixers. They're not the, I forget the terminology that she used, but some people are like the action oriented, like get her done. They go into like full blown mode and they'll take care of everything. And other people are just like frozen, and they just kind of, oh, we need to be safe. Let's just stay in our home. And so, but because this went on for so long, we've actually run out of the adrenaline that was keeping us going, and that's where people started talking about the fatigue that set in. And so now people are in this like phase of fatigue, and it made so much sense to me, even in light of stuff that I've been working through lately. Like I share at my small group, that I had a chaotic family of origin. And so then for many years that was kind of like, I blamed that for my anxiety. And then I married you, started dating you, and then married you, and I blamed you for my anxiety. Like all my troubles, everything was because I, was with this guy who became an addict. And then you got sober in a very dramatic way. And yet my anxiety levels were still super high, and I blamed my stressful job. And especially there was like a particular moment in time where we entered like this really stressful situation that I wasn't interested in being part of. And so then I was like really blamed that for my anxiety. And now I had a long lead up to losing my job that we planned, that I would actually take a year off work, and I knew that it would happen, and I was really excited about it, and I don't need a job, and I don't have any reason for stress. And yet over the last 8 months, I have oftentimes encountered stress. And so I'm fully aware that I'm creating the stress inside myself. And how I'm creating the stress inside myself, but I feel absolutely helpless and hopeless to not do it. And I've read tons of stuff, and I've encountered tons of stuff, and like tried to fix it and figure it out, and read all these psychology things and examined all this stuff. And so over the last week, I feel like I've come more and more to understand what it actually means to let go and let God of this is actually outside of me. And so recognizing the problem.
It's inside of you, but outside of your capacity to fix it because you can't fix it.
And so what is it? I mean, I grew up my childhood going to church and trying to live as a Christian and just feeling like I could never be good enough, that I would never be able to follow all these rules. And at a certain point, I just gave up because I was like, I'm never going to be like those people. Comparison, which is terrible, but seeing from the outside all these holy people, but then coming back into trying to live a relationship with God, not just trying to be a Christian, but trying to live a relationship with God, and really feeling like there's all these promises in the Bible that I actually believe can come true and will come true, but I am not figuring out how to make them come true for me.
And that's a beautiful part of recovery. It leads us into dying of self.
Right.
Because we try to self-manage and we put up all these behavioral management tools, and they just heap more shame and more guilt and just leave us hopeless and helpless because we don't know what the problem is. And it creates more chaos within the person and more anxiety and more...
It has, yeah.
All right. We better end.
This one's the There was moments where I forgot we were on video. I'm sorry.
No,
that was long.
I feel like I can say this because I've done the same thing. Is like I remember coming into recovery thinking I'm like absolutely crazy and I've blown I've blown all the I'm never going to go back to normal, and I need a psychotherapist and I need medication for the rest of my life, and you kind of did the same thing at the beginning of your break. I need therapists. I'm a little bit crazy. and then you're like way smarter than any of the therapists, and you lasted 3 weeks and go, I don't need some kid telling me. But we need transformation. Yeah. We don't need behavioral therapy management. We need to understand what the problem is, identify it, and then apply the solution.
That's not to say that there's not a time and place for medication. Don't hear what we didn't say.
No.
We do believe in medication.
And however, we can put behavioral stuff in place, but that can't be the solution.
That can't be the solution. And so
it's not going to work.
Oftentimes, I feel like that's the time that I'm in, is just stepping back and actually saying, okay, God, you just need to do this.
We're addicted to alcohol, and food's never the problem. It's what it does to our brain and the chemicals that it releases. Codependency releases chemicals that we become addicted to.
Which that I never understood. That I never understood. That's fine for you people. The addict, the alcoholic, the food addict, all of that made sense to me. And yet I was like, what is my problem? It's just me. I'm the problem. How do I just change the core of who I am? And it's time to end this video. But I feel hopeful. I feel hopeful now, in the last couple months, and I feel it's ridiculous that we're doing this on video. However, I have very much appreciated verbalizing things out loud, because there's something totally different that happens when I verbalize things out loud as opposed to what I just do in my head.
Well, and I think this is so perfect for people to come out of shame, because it's not who you are. And it's so many of us keep failing and failing, going why? I just have to try harder.
Right.
No, you don't. We have to identify what the problem is. And if we don't ever identify what the problem is, so it's what these things do in us and for us, and we just remember that, and we become addicted, and that's the cycle. So then applying the 12 steps, 1 through 9, is teaching us how to die of self.
Which, as we realized so early on, the 12 steps are straight out of the Bible.
Straight out.
Remember that?
All right, we better go. We're going into
step 4. Hey, step 5.
We're going into extra innings here.
Have a good day.
But
we have church at 4.
All right. See you at 4. Bye.